Thanks for joining us. You're watching Addis News Hour with the news. I'm Tabitha John. Do stay with us. Scholars urge Ethiopians to strengthen their firm stance on national interests, recognizing Egypt's proxy war to thwart the construction of the GERD. They also underscore that the completion of Ethiopia's Grand Renaissance Dam alone is an important milestone in stabilizing regional politics over the River Abai. Goshu Meliso has the details.
Egypt has been restless for a decade toward the construction of the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. Recently, Egypt claimed Ethiopia's sovereign land, Benshangul Gumuz, belongs to Sudan.
بني شنقول المنطقة اللي فيها سد النهضة.
This irresponsible move is dubbed Egypt has no clear stance on equitable and fair utilization of River Abai. The scholars urged Ethiopians to strengthen their firm stance on national interests, recognizing Egypt's efforts to thwart the construction of the dam.
Egypt's advocating effort or proxy war against Ethiopia is not new. The sixth general election is approaching. The election should be conducted in a way to respect the national interest of the country and the people more than ever. The diaspora and local community are playing their part on the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam. It is time to come together for vast work on the national agenda.
It is indicated that Egypt's proxy war and contradictory information is nothing other than strengthening Ethiopia's stance on Renaissance Dam, but it is crucial time to inform the international community in a scientific way.
Scholars in the field should address very quick information to the international community on Egypt's contradictory information and revising already delivered information before the information build upon that issue.
Egypt is following double standard strategy, in one way negotiation and in another way quoting its self-made scholars as well as activists to disrupt the GERD in proxy war. Scholars agree it is the right time to address Ethiopians and international community about Egypt's misleading information.
There are Egyptian scholars who conducted researches in supporting Ethiopia's stance. Even though we couldn't get them physically, we have to approach their studies in media. Egyptian scholars indicated in their studies that Ethiopia's dam will not harm Egypt. We have also included independent bodies, researchers who don't favor either Egypt or Ethiopia to international community.
Completing the $4.6 billion mega dam as scheduled is said to be imperative to foil Egypt's proxy war and other interests, it was indicated.
Scholars say that Sudan and Egypt were not expecting Ethiopia's decision and preparation to undertake the second round filling of the GERD, surviving external pressures. They called on Ethiopians locally and overseas to continue their unity and support towards the country's move for the second round filling of the GERD reservoir. Sintayo Tamrat has compiled Ethiopian news agency's file.
None of the 11 riparian countries, including Ethiopia, has ever used the Nile water for development purposes. But unfortunately, based on colonial agreements, Egypt and Sudan have been using the water with full monopoly. Though all riparian states deserve equitable share of the water to ease their socio-economic issues, yet Ethiopia's case is different because it is being forced by Egypt and Sudan not to use the water, while the country is a source of over 85% of the Nile water. Now Ethiopia has already paved the way to other riparian countries that they can as well equitably use the Nile water without harming downstream countries. Today, while Ethiopia is on the way to undertake second round filling of GERD reservoir, surviving these extreme external and internal pressures, Sudan and Egypt have not expected Ethiopia's move.
Their madness has gone to the extent they attempt to give ownership of the river to some Arab countries. They are trying to gain the support of Arabs on their wrong narratives. They are even threatening Ethiopia not to use the river which they say belongs to the Arab countries. They are still trying to propagate these evil views to African brothers that have a strong belief that Africa shall prosper using its own resources.
The two downstream countries continue their long-standing gloomy narratives against the river and the GERD project and acts of destabilizing Ethiopia.
Further, they have been planning the plot behind the conflicts, terror attacks and instabilities in the country. Using their long arms, Egyptian leaders and politicians in particular have been trying for over 50 years to influence global financial institutions and some lender countries so that Ethiopia shall not get any fund for any project on the Abai River and currently to stop the construction of GERD. That's why Ethiopia is surviving from all these internal and external pressures, and readiness to undertake second round filling of dam reservoir has become a grand dissatisfaction and surprise for Egypt and Sudan.
Furthermore, the scholars pointed out that Egypt and Sudan are doing their level best to put pressure on Ethiopia to sign a binding agreement before the second filling of the dam in this rainy season. They are currently leaving every stone unturned to destabilize Ethiopia because they know the second round filling of the dam is a turning point.
ውሃው ዝም ብሎ እንዲሄድ ከተፈለገ ልማት እንዳይሰራ ማስቆም ነው። ልማት ለማስቆም ደግሞ አገሪቱን መንግስት አልባ ማድረግ ነው።
You need to stop the development project on Abai River if you want to use the water alone. And to stop the project, you need to change the Ethiopia into statelessness. You know there will be no good development if there is no stable government. That's why Egypt and Sudan are repeatedly planning and executing plots of massive instabilities in Ethiopia. Though there exist differences among people of a given country, Sudan and Egypt have been taking the advantage of our differences to make further rifts by financing groups, arming them, allowing media access and providing anti-peace plots.
Ethiopia is keen to use its water resources in a reasonable and equitable way without causing significant harm on others. The world is watching this. Things will change and the government needs to work on diplomacy, the scholars suggested. All the three parties need to resolve their differences and continue negotiating in good faith to benefit from this giant dam and grow together.
Ethiopia is the source of the Blue Nile and contributes over 85% of the Nile's stream flow. To this day, Egypt and Sudan are using 100% of the water, sticking to their 1959 colonial agreement between them. Not being signatories, Ethiopia and other upstream states do not recognize this agreement. Ethiopia is at the eve of completing the Great Renaissance Dam. Costing over $5 billion that is being paid by ordinary Ethiopians. This dam will generate 5.1 gigawatt of power, and it is a non-consumptive, eco-friendly, existential necessity to millions. The three countries have been in dispute over the construction, filling and operation of this dam. Even thought this dam provides major benefits to Sudan and Egypt in terms of reducing evaporation loss, silt, sedimentation and unexpected flood. This dam is not just about generating power. It is a matter of survival for millions of Ethiopians who deserve a dignified life as their Egyptian counterparts.
You're watching Addis News Hour. Head of the Egyptian Coptic Orthodox Church, Pope Tawadros II, invited the GERD parties to seek peace and a consensual solution that ensures development for their peoples, stepping away from stubbornness. Quote, "We all want to live in a state of peace, prosperity, and development, and always life teaches us that battles do not bear fruit," Pope Tawadros said to Ahram Online. Haptamu Ashage has more.
Head of Egypt's Coptic Orthodox Church Pope Tawadros II told Ahram Online over the weekend that he prays that all diplomatic and political efforts to find a solution to the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam dispute succeed in order to avert any other options. Egypt and Sudan have been pursuing diplomatic and political options for a decade now to resolve the Gerd dispute with Ethiopia. The two downstream countries call for a legally binding agreement on the filling and operation of the dam to avoid any harmful implications on their water interests. Ethiopia, on the other side, reiterated its plan to fill the dam this summer with or without an agreement, despite the two countries' objections. In his sermon while leading the Eastern Mass at St. Mark's Coptic Orthodox Cathedral in Cairo's Abbasiya district, the Pope invited the Gerd parties to seek peace and a consensual solution that ensures development for their people away from insurgents. We all want to live in a state of peace, prosperity, and development, and always life teaches us the battles do not bear fruit.
بسم الاب والابن والروح القدس الاله الواحد امين. خريستوس انستي اليسوس انستي المسيح قام بالحقيقه قد قام. اهنئكم ايها الاحباء في كل كنائسنا القبطيه في عبر المسكونه كلها بهذا العيد وبفرح افراحنا. اود ان ارسل تهنئتي الى الاباء المطارنه والاباء الكهنه والشمامسه ومجالس الكنائس الأراخنة، وأيضا إلى كل الشباب وإلى كل الأطفال وإلى كل الأسر. أرسل هذه التهنئة من أرض مصر.
He also invited sisterly Ethiopia to cooperate for development instead of any distress, dispute or troubles, and for the sake of all those peoples who have lived on Africa's lands for hundreds and thousands of years. The Pope says the Coptic Orthodox Church supports the Egyptian state in its endeavor to find a fair solution that would serve the peoples of Egypt and Sudan. As the National Coptic Orthodox Church, we stand by the state and hail the role of the political leadership in its endeavors to find a comprehensive and fair solution to the water issue. This solution should ensure the right of the Egyptian and Sudanese people to life that has been granted by God, he added. They say Mass at St. Mark's Coptic Orthodox Cathedral was held with limited attendance due to the coronavirus pandemic. Only some bishops, priests, and a limited number of people were present at the Mass under strict precautionary measures. In his sermon, Pope Tawadros said he prays that coronavirus indicates and that God grants strength to the workers at the medical sector, calling them the first line in facing this pandemic. We pray for the sake of the grieving families and for the infected people so that God may bless them with recovery. He also extended his condolences to the families of medical workers who lost their lives while doing their job, including treating coronavirus patients.
Media experts urge the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia to further adjust communication flow for the upcoming national elections, slated for the upcoming June 2021. The media experts also expressed their views that various gaps are observed in the board in giving adequate information rapidly. Kasahun Chane has the details.
Media experts said the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia should have a great concern to the media institutions that they are among the interested groups to have adequate and trustworthy information to the general public. Though there were various efforts undertaken by the National Electoral Board of Ethiopia so far, media experts urged the board to further strengthen and improve the workflow properly to the media houses.
ከአማካሪው ጋር እንገናኛለን ጥያቄዎችም ይመለሳሉ ግን
We meet with the advisor and our questions are being responded not satisfactorily. That may cause the community to be uninterested by the board. I think the communication department at the board ought to be further expanded to deliver a wide range of information about the election.
When I ask questions to the board, I straightforwardly and swiftly can get information. Colleagues have had difficulties most of the time, including my staff members. Therefore, I suggest appropriate workflow and responses to the journalists. Besides, I believe that there must be a chance of getting them due to the live streaming on the media as we are approaching the election.
Meanwhile, the media experts called on the board during such critical times there must be a well-organized workflow in order to deliver proper information. They also informed that a well-organized workflow could be an asset to fight against the wrong views and fact-checking practices on the fake news that perhaps plan to distribute.
Currently, information is leading the world as it is the first of many planned issues. There might be certain individuals who are engaged in distributing fake news, pictures and so on unknowingly. Therefore, there ought to be a capacity created by the National Electoral Board to fight all these glitches. To get the advisor, it is true that we are calling more than 10 times per day. That is boring to the media. So I recommended that there should be a labor division in addition to her.
The media experts further accentuated that it is not too late for the communication improvement to the board through consulting the neutral media experts from the media houses and adjust the proper communication channel.
ባህሉን ትውፊቱን የኮሶቨርን የእንጅባራን ታሪካዊ አመጣጥ እሴቱን እንመለከታለን።
እንጅባራ ማለት በኢትዮጵያ ታሪክ ውስጥ የጥንት ከተማ ከሚባሉት አንዷ ነች። እንዲሁ እንጅባራ በማለት ሳይሆን ረጅም ዘመን ያስቆጠረች ከጎንደር ነገስታት ጀምሮ የተመሰረተች ነች።
Minister of the Ministry of Women, Children and Youth, Filtan Abdullahi Ahmed, has discussed with European Union Managing Director for Africa, Rita Larangenia, on various issues. On the occasion, the minister explained to the EU Regional Managing Director what the ministry has been doing in the prevention of violence against women and rehabilitation of survivors and related activities. Filtan also briefed the Managing Director on the activities being carried out to protect abandoned children children and internally displaced people. The director, to her part, reiterated the commitment of the EU to support the efforts of the Ethiopian government in its short and long-term endeavors. President of Ethiopian Patriots Association, Lij Daniel Jote Mesfin, called upon citizens to stand united so as to triumph over foreign enemies of the nation. Ethiopia has encountered a circumstance that is similar to the invasion perpetrated against it 80 years ago. The Ethiopian Patriots Association held a press briefing regarding the 80th anniversary of the Patriots' Victory Day, to be commemorated on May 5th, marking the end of the 5-year Italian fascist occupation in 1941. Lij Daniel Jote Mesfin told journalists that the Victory Day will be celebrated with various events in the vicinity of Victory Monument at Arat Kilo, in attendance of high-level officials, including President Sahle-Work Zewde. Ethiopia continues to be a source of pride for its citizens, the whole black people at large, and those who were under colony. The president stressed calling citizens to stand united against enemies of the nation.
Here I am in the Kalahari Desert in South Africa. I'm actually in the Kalahari Frontier Park, which is in a remote part of Northern Cape. It's about as far into South Africa as you get. We're bordered on one side by Botswana and on the other side by Namibia. This is the most beautiful region. It is everything you expect a desert to be, but with African animals. And we've seen a hell of a lot. We've seen lions, we've seen giraffe, we've seen an abundance of springbok and oryx. Today I've been and I have visited a Bushman's village. The Bushmen were there in their native dress, explaining their way of life with us, and I can tell you it's quite a frugal way of life. And their lifestyle may be simple, but it seems to be that they're very, very happy people.
Then now we are back in our place where we was Bushman.
The African Union mission in Somalia, AMISOM, has recognized Ethiopian soldiers for their contribution towards the restoration of peace and stability in Somalia. The Ethiopian National Defense Forces, ENDF soldiers, on Sunday received African Union medals and certificates after completing a year and 6 months of service in Somalia under AMISOM. The troops were deployed under the AMISOM Sector 4 in Beledweyne, Hiran region, where they operated alongside the Djibouti Armed Forces and the Somali National Army to degrade Al-Shabaab terrorists. Ethiopia is one of the 5 AMISOM troop contributing countries, alongside Burundi, Djibouti, Kenya, and Uganda. And finally, due to the spread of the third wave of coronavirus pandemic, hospitals in Kenya are in dire need of oxygen to treat critically ill patients. But the country is facing challenges to get enough oxygen plants. Demis Mekrea has more from CGTN.